And it's a Monday morning, and it's top of the morning to Pat McArt, who drove out of Donegal and into Ireland. No, into Northern Ireland. Into Northern
The
Ireland
occupied territories, yes.
And had a general jaunt around. We may come back to that later on, Pat. But there's been more serious matters appearing in the headlines this morning. This thing about whether or not Boris is going to stick with the Irish protocol in the withdrawal bill. He said originally that, essentially there would be a border in the Irish Sea or some checks in the Irish Sea for stuff coming from Britain to the north of Ireland. Now he's saying, it seems to be that he's saying, no, he's going to pass a law that's going to wipe that part, and there's going to be no checks. Have I got that right?
That's it. Yeah. Basically, what he's saying is they're going to go out with an internal markets bill or something like this. One of the things that they agreed on about 6 months ago, or less than 6 months ago, was that the border would be between Ireland and Britain on the sea, and it was a sort of a flexible border, that there'd be no hard border on the island of Ireland. Well, right, as of if this bill goes ahead on Wednesday, there are parts of it, they say the EU is not going to determine what they do internal Britain once they leave the EU. So they're going to bring out a law that's going to override the agreement that they already made with the EU. Now, the big thing about the Good Friday Agreement was Ireland would be treated as one economic unit and a single market. So the minute they start to just messing around with this, Ireland is no longer a single market, and so on. So the whole terms of the Good Friday Agreement are out the window, because the border is back in Ireland again. So Jude, the whole implications for the Irish government, for the nationalist parties in the north, for trade on the island of Ireland, for our relationships with Britain, with Britain's relationship with Europe. Now, if Britain can do this, you don't accept their word for anything from here on in, because if you can tear up an agreement so soon after making it, why should anybody believe you?
Well, they're probably modeling himself, Boris is probably modeling himself on Trump, because Trump did something similar with the Paris Agreement, didn't he? Where there was a climate, they agreed to have targets for reducing CO2 emissions, and he in short order just tore it up, walked away. So Boris perhaps feels he can do the same thing. But I tell you, Pat, I was listening to Radio 4 this morning, and there was a guy from the British government, I'm not sure if he was an MP or not, but he was very definite that it was just a few loose ends that they wanted to tie in, and there was no question of them not, maintaining what they had signed up to in the first place. Now,
no, Jude, the Financial Times is a thing. I was watching Sky News last night about 12 o'clock, and just the headlines are coming on, and that's not what they're saying. They're saying this, I think it's internal markets bill or something like that, will seriously override parts of the agreement made in regards to the Northern Ireland or the Ireland Protocol, and namely that they're going to shift. They said for the cohesion of this is an internal markets bill for England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and that any goods and tariffs and all this sort of stuff will be made by Westminster, not by the EU. So if they start, up until now, they have agreed that Northern Ireland will stay within the single market, the EU single market. That's not going to happen. If this bill changes that, it changes the whole dynamics of the agreement that they made last, whatever it was, 6 months ago.
It's pretty scary, because if they eliminate the border between Britain and the north of Ireland, then you have the problem of goods coming from Britain into Northern Ireland and inevitably finding their way across the borderless north to south route as it stands. So you assume somebody would have to build some kind of border. Now, the next question is, who's going to build that? I would have said the British might well say, well, we don't mind. I mean, it's not a problem. We don't mind if stuff's going from the north into the south. Well, that's the way it is. But the EU would care. And the EU, what I see perhaps happening is that the EU will say to the South of Ireland government, you build a border. We want checks on anything coming into the EU. And we can't, you should be playing your part as a member and have customs posts there.
Yeah,
I know they've said the opposite a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
I think if Britain pulls this stunt, I think then the EU, Barnier and people like that are going to have to, and Van der Leyen will say to Ireland, look, for the integrity of the single market, we can't have Britain flooding cheap stuff in through the back door and through Belfast. Like there's how many ferries coming to Larne and Belfast and how many flights into Belfast, the two airports in Belfast,
Yep.
even the one in Derry. So they could be flooding the stuff and through the south of Ireland down to Rosslare and flogging it across to
Yep.
Paris or
Exactly.
France. So the whole thing then becomes a mess. So there'll be massive. That's why I said earlier on, Jude, there's going to be massive implications for the island of Ireland if this happens. If the Brits pull out of this deal that they agreed on,
Yeah.
I think the whole thing falls apart. And there's a what is it, now? Boris is saying that October the 15th is the big day, Jude, and that if there's no deal then, that's it. Everything's off the table, and they're going to revert to type. They're going to do whatever's best for them, and to hell with the consequences for everybody else.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
That is the nuclear option, and if they want to go in, but by God, I think there'll be a hell of a price to pay for it afterwards.
Well, I would be interested in knowing who's going to be constructing and manning the border. This is something the DUP has said often, why would we bother building a border across Ireland? It'll be the south of Ireland will be building it, the EU. And I think they have a point,
I think if they pull out, if Britain pulls out without a no deal, without question, the onus in regard to the integrity of the single market and at its most vulnerable point will fall to the Dublin government.
Okay, follow from that then. The whole point about the new border was that really would be a target for violence, and it would make life enormously difficult for the communities living along the border, and for any amount of business that runs north and south to north. So, will it make a difference? Would Republicans, dissident Republicans, attack the forces of the south as they man the border?
Where this all goes again is, but I would take it this. I know enough people who have said privately there's never going to be a border on the island of Ireland again. So if they suddenly these things start appearing up, you can bet your life. As I can't remember the name of the Labour MP said at some time, there'll have to be some sort of border on the other side of the fence too, I would presume. So the next thing is one shot. And then the next thing, they bring the police out to protect the customs, and then the police get shot at, and they bring out the army to protect the police, and the whole thing becomes. Jude, all it takes is a couple of incidents, and the whole thing escalates one more time.
But come back to this point: who's going to be constructing and manning the border? Are you suggesting that there'll need to be two borders?
I would think so, Jude.
Why?
Well, I presume if there's going to be a massive change in, if there's no deal, and Jude. Let me use a simple example. About 4 or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there was a massive difference between the price of diesel and petrol in the south and the north. I remember there's a filling station not more than 5-10 minutes away from me, and the queues from Derry were literally, and I mean literally, miles long. They were because you could fill up your petrol tank for about half the price you could in the north. Now, if it works both ways. If things in the south are suddenly very much cheaper, and people from the British side are coming out here and smuggling stuff back in, now, Jude, every time there's a border, there's always smuggling. That's the way it is. It's
my only concern is, not my only concern, but one of the things of interest to me is whether or not there be two borders. I think if there's only a border constructed by the EU/Republic of Ireland, that the question of violence against that is problematic, I think. Because I think it'd be very difficult for dissident Republicans to win popular support behind that. If, on the other hand, you have a second border or a border constructed by the British side, that is to say in the north, I think that would certainly be seen as fair game.
Well, Jude, I'm not sure what the outworking of it, but I'll tell you this much: for the integrity of the EU market, Brussels will certainly insist that if there's no deal, that there's some sort of border between the north and south. They're not going to let Ireland be the back door from which Britain and maybe other places can flood stuff in, like chlorinated chicken and Brazilian beef can come into Belfast and then on and through Ireland and into the EU. They're not going to allow that. They're going to have checks along the border to ensure that doesn't happen.
But Pat, this is going to be totally contrary to what the EU has argued all along. You remember the famous backstop?
Yeah.
And they abandoned the backstop because they got a situation where they didn't need it anymore. Because the idea of the backstop was to have no border between the North and the South. They stopped using that word because they had an arrangement where the Czechs would be in the Irish Sea, much to the annoyance of the DUP. At no point that I can remember has the EU ever said that they would be in favour of a border between the South and the North. So
but I think but hold on. That was, they were going to work on the basis that they were going to have some sort of arrangement with Britain, and that, you know, irrespective of what happened, that Britain and the EU would agree a deal in regard to Ireland. Now, if Britain pulls the plug on that agreement that they have signed 6 months ago, that's a game changer. Like the EU, it will obviously affect any negotiations going forward, and I don't think Britain can expect too much by way of goodwill from here on in from the EU. So what happens in the short term is going to be, as you say, I don't think it'll be very popular if dissident Republicans attack an Irish border. But having said that, there's going to be outworkings of some kind, because I think there's so much anger about this whole thing. If it's a stunt is pulled like this and agreements made, you know. So let's look at the demographics. Back to the old one. 4 out of the 6 counties already nationalist majorities. Belfast, the first time ever that Stormont, the Assembly, has got a non-unionist majority. Do you think all those people living in the North are just going to sit quiet? Oh, here we've got screwed again. That's grand. We'll live with that. I don't see that happening. I think there's going to be an upsurge of sort of nationalist sentiment, and the next thing you're going to see a call for a border pool. So how it works out, whether it works out through violence or an upsurge in nationalism, it's something there. You can bet your life it's going to be a catalyst for something major.
Very good point. Certainly that would sharpen the whole question of whether or not we should have a border poll if a literal border is planned, even, let alone put in place. It's a very, I'm going to use the word, it's a fascinating subject, but that's being too sort of gentle with it. It's a catastrophic bloody situation.
Jude, I know you start off here by saying yesterday, but this time last year, near enough, give it take a month or two, myself and my wife took off and we went up through Ballycastle and through Coleraine into Ballycastle, up through Torhead, into the Glens Vannon, one of the most beautiful places on earth. I absolutely love it. We stopped off in Carnloughlin, drawn round by Ballybina. We bypassed Ballymena and came home by Clough-Mills and that. The last time we were up there was no sign of any for sale signs. But yesterday, after about 5-10 minutes past Coleraine, my wife says, "No, there's a farm for sale." About 10-15 minutes, you see on land for sale. And then, no, okay, it's empirical and it's anecdotal and whatever other words. But we noticed about 5 land for sale. See, are already a lot of farmers in Northern Ireland voting with their feet because of the cap thing? Are they sort of saying it's no? Jude, I remember this guy very clearly saying the margins on farming in the North were something like 15% at best. And he said if tariffs were introduced for say beef at 20%, he says we're already in -5, and he says so we're no longer efficient or viable. So I wonder, a lot of farmers are they quietly selling their land, getting out before this whole thing happens? Now, that's only an observation based on no facts, but there were clearly 5-6 farms for sale that I've never noticed before. Maybe that's just normal churn. I don't know.
I think farmers are having a hard time generally. In fact, there's a report on RTE, I think it was last night or the night before, where they were pointing out that farmers in the south were going to have a hard time because the crop there was very good weather in the early part of the summer, and then we had a lot of rain, and a lot of the crop was lying there with water trenches running through it and lost.
Absolutely.
And they said they were going to be very bad for most farmers. But I understood that the cap at present, if you take up at the north, certainly, and probably the south as well, that the cap is worth 80% of the income for many farmers.
Yeah.
Britain has promised, Theresa May, I think it was, promised that would continue for 2 years after Brexit happened. So that gives you another 2 years after the end of December.
Yeah.
Whether farmers will feel that's enough to make them feel secure, I wouldn't feel secure if I only had the promise of this continuing for
Jude, if I said to you, I can guarantee your wages for the next 2 years, after that you're on your own, would you feel secure? Come on.
No, I hardly would, all right.
Yeah.
But then it's so tricky, you see. For example, one of the things we all expected would happen is that the price of houses, because of pandemic, because of Brexit and so on, the price of houses would go down. Now, the fact is that the price of houses have gone up. And they're trying to figure that out, and they're saying it may have to do with the fact that a lot of people are moving out of the cities and are taking up residence in the suburbs or at a distance because they feel safer in terms of COVID, and also because they're able to work from home and you don't have this damn commute that you often have. But my point is, if something unexpected like house prices going up can occur, maybe there's some way through for farmers.
No, Jude, I think me and you have already discussed this one. I heard of Gerald, in fact, she absolutely echoed. It was like an echo chamber of what we had discussed on RT, saying she had moved from Dublin to Donegal. She said that she was paying £700 a month for a one-bedroom and a house in Dublin, and there were 7 of them sharing it. So that was £3,500 a month for a house. Jeez, that was some anyway. So she's moved to Donegal. She's currently living with her parents, but she says her cost of living has gone way, way down, and she will be able to afford to buy her own house somewhere. I think it's south of Donegal town. And she's, it's just the whole thing is, Jude, you've said it yourself. The house prices down around here haven't fallen at all, and the reason is there is now demand for houses here because half of Dublin is trying to move out.
Okay, but I think we're out of time here. I just leave you with one last thought. We discussed Trump and his campaign there the last day, and the virulence of it, and the fanaticism that was behind it. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they made the point, they watched us talking about this, and they said, you missed the main point. And I said, well, what's that? And they said, because the Democratic contender is a Catholic.
Yeah.
And they believed that was a very important factor in the thinking of the sort of redneck constituency or the type of people who are following Trump. You think, were they wrong?
Dude, I don't know about that. Like, in fairness, Jesus, when you hear all these, Trump has been sent by God, he's been appointed, you're going, good, merciful Jesus, where'd that come out of? And you're going, these people, and you sort of think, and there is this Bible Belt thing about Trump, and he's got the troops out to push everybody out of the way so he can stand with a Bible and all the rest. That's his constituency. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, I don't know. But John F. Kennedy got elected, way back in the day, and he was a Catholic, so
do you think
you think that's not a big issue? Maybe it is.
I wonder. Anyway, I thought I'd pass it on to you. Okay, Pat, thanks very much.
All the best, Jude.
Thank you.
Bye.